do you think the country should have had a more expansive debate prior to the invasion of Iraq, not Afghanistan?
I also have some comments about your commentary, which I found very interesting. And I think you perform a far more valuable public service in teaching high school students than I do, which is more about teaching people how to make money as lawyers. I would say one thing is, this is my experience now about working on the Iraq War, is Congress doesn't really want to have that kind of public debate that you're talking about, this sort of fulsome public debate about whether to go to Iraq and maybe the constitutional powers of the presidency of Congress. I'll tell you, so when Congress took up this issue, you may all remember this was in the sort of fall and winter of 2002, and Congress decided it was going to pass or consider an authorization for the war in Iraq. So who did they ask to draft it? Us. And Congress didn't even go to the trouble of drafting it itself. They asked the executive branch to draft it for them. And so then I worked on drafting it up. And so we started getting these calls from these senators to come brief them on the meaning of the statute which we had drafted for them since we had wrote it. And so we went and briefed different senators. And the first thing the great majority of them said is, why do we have to vote on this? So I don't want to vote on the Iraq War at all. I don't want to do this. I mean, it was really, they were irritated that they would have to have a yes or no vote on the Iraq War. It was interesting. It's really, if you look back at it, it was the administration more that wanted to have the vote on the Iraq War because they wanted to, right? I think clear. They wanted to pin people down on, yes or no on the Iraq War. So if there is going to be a debate, I really don't think that it's Congress. So to take the previous hypothetical about going to Iran or not, I doubt Congress will be the forum where that kind of debate would occur. So the question would be, and they just said, that's why everyone loves the Supreme Court these days, right? Because everybody loves the Supreme Court because you have a forum to debate a lot of things like affirmative action and abortion, and you get to make these very rational arguments to the court. 9 smart people, they have to write an opinion explaining why they vote the way they do, which members of Congress and the executive branch don't. So it's a great model of rationality, but I don't think there's a forum like that for the kind of question the kind of question you want to talk about, right?
Is that right, David, that historically Congress has shirked responsibility and preferred to pass the buck to the court, to the president?
Well, again, I go back to what Woodrow Wilson, his characterization of the Congress as a place where accountability was very hard to pin down. So this is a characteristic of the institution. Again, it's not just specific to our time. So it's just built into the structure and nature of the institution itself. But I will say, in response to the comment/question, that we do have in the record a counterexample of an extended public debate about the decision to go to war, and that's in 1940-41. Again, the popular mythology recollects only the Pearl Harbor attack as the great pivot point. In fact, there had been a long, year or maybe even 2-year-long, quite expansive, comprehensive debate about what role the United States should play in this conflict, which after all begun in 1939, late 1939. The Lend-Lease Act in March 1941 is one marker on that pathway toward cultivating a deep and broad public consensus on the necessity and wisdom of the intervention that we eventually undertook. And that debate was very vigorous, and there were people lined up on both sides. Charles Lindbergh, probably the most famous voice on the negative side. But it did have the effect of laying a foundation for great consensus and agreement and cooperation once the emergency is formally declared with the declaration of war. So there's no question that if that kind of thing happens, it has positive, beneficial effects on the way the country can comport itself once it gets into the war in question.